There are certain vehicles which don't necessarily have to be focused around the idea of high performance to still deserve a place in this series. And for those who are maybe new to this series, we focus on vehicles which are easily forgotten, overlooked, underappreciated and undervalued, which deserve to be spoken about more. And also the series has the benefit for people like me who, especially back when I was a kid, loved to find out about new cars which I'd never heard of before. So chances are, over the course of this series, you'll probably hear of vehicles which you hadn't heard of before. Now, this car in particular is not a performance machine. It's the Toyota Mega Cruiser, and as you can immediately see from looking at the car, it is Japan's answer to the Hummer. Very directly so. It's designed for military use primarily, with some other uses as well, involved in ambulance work, fire truck work, that kind of thing, with a few sold on the civilian production market, but not many. And financially speaking, the Mega Cruiser was not a great deal for Toyota. They didn't make a huge amount of money with the car, and it was much more of a speciality vehicle than many of their other vehicles. They did learn valuable things from it for the future of their truck and SUV range, so it was valuable as a testing bed, but the car stands out from the rest of their range as being a much bigger, beefier and more extreme off-roader. So being Japan's answer basically to the Hummer, what can you expect from the car? Is it just basically a rip-off of the Hummer? Is it exactly the same? Well, the production run ran from 1995 for 7 years. A few were sold to civilians, but they were very heavily taxed because of the size of the car. Of course, in Japan, cars are regulated very heavily based on their size, which is one of the many reasons why K cars are so popular, those super tiny, super lightweight, super affordable city runabouts. This one is about as opposite to that as you can get. It weighs 2.9 tons, it's over 7 feet wide, and it's actually more practical than a Hummer, because unlike a Hummer, which has 4 seats in standard form, this one has 6. So it's still not remarkable, given its size. It could definitely have more, but at the end of the day, being a military vehicle at heart, it's not surprising that it doesn't have as many seats as it arguably could or should have. You could quite comfortably have this car seating 4 abreast. It's that wide. But they didn't do that, and it's not all too surprising that they didn't. So what do you get in terms of spec? We already covered the fact that it weighs 2.9 tons. It is a full-time 4-wheel drive vehicle with 4-wheel steering. It's got 3 locking diffs in the front, middle and rear, a 4-speed automatic gearbox, and in terms of power and torque, it's not monstrous, but it gets the job done. The engine is a 4.1 litre turbocharged engine, runs on good old diesel, puts out 150 horsepower and 280 pound-feet of torque. Now, peak torque is at less than 2000 RPM, peak power is at less than 3500 RPM, so it really gives you easy, effortless power and torque basically whenever you need it. Now, of course, it's not a performance car. The performance is not remarkable, the acceleration is certainly not remarkable, and it's not designed to be. So, in terms of the broad scheme of this series, it is probably one of the slowest, if not the slowest car that will ever feature therein. But I personally just find this to be a vehicle which, surprisingly, doesn't get the exposure, especially among petrol heads and fans of trucks, that it deserves to have. Because at the end of the day, it deserves to have every bit as much attention as a Hummer, if not more so, given the fact that in some ways it is superior to it. It doesn't have as much power as a Hummer or as much torque, but that's kind of more impressive, because the Hummer doesn't even have great performance given that extra power. This one just has what it needs to, and it weighs significantly less than a Hummer as well, over half a ton less. And in terms of off-road ability, it would be interesting to compare it to a Hummer, which doubtless some people have done because of how similar they are. Now, in the broad scheme of things, this car isn't going to blow people's minds, but it's just a vehicle which I thought deserved more attention, considering how cool it is, how rare it is, and how great an off-roader it is. It seems to be a very popular choice of rarer 4x4 in Russia in particular, which is interesting. I wouldn't have expected that, but that's fair enough, and you can find quite a few videos of the car in action on YouTube, most of which are in Russia. And in terms of price and used value, well, it's a pretty good investment, because these things cost a lot. In used form, you're looking at a minimum price tag of around £80,000, which is over $100,000. That's pretty high, and in fact is in similar territory to a Hummer H1, very appropriately so. And if memory serves, I believe this vehicle was, at the time of its release, the most expensive Japanese production car ever made. So although in the broad scheme of things the Mega Cruiser isn't going to make a big splash in petrolhead communities the world over, it is a vehicle which, I personally believe anyway, deserves to have more chatter about it and how cool this car is than it currently does. So I'd love to hear down below what you think of the Mega Cruiser, or by definition the Hummer as well. I'm a fan of both vehicles, and of course other cars that you consider to be underappreciated as well. But that's it overall for this particular installment. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.